Hello guys, welcome back to another video. Now today we are rebuilding the cylinder head from the Mini Cooper S, but before we get into things, make sure you hit that like button. It really does help me out and it is greatly appreciated. Now then, the first thing we are going to want to do, and probably the most time consuming things when it comes to rebuilding the cylinder head, is relapping the valves. Now what do I mean when I say relapping the valves? Some people call it regrinding the valves. It's all to your however you want to say it, but essentially you are just going to be creating a tight as possible and airtight as possible seal between the back of the valve and the seats, the valve seats in the cylinder head. And essentially you're going to do this by way of using some grinding paste. So this is, think of it as sandpaper, or sandpaper, but in a paste. So obviously you can apply it to the back of a valve and then you can rub the valve against the seat inside of the cylinder head, and you're going to want to create a smooth surface between the two, so you don't get any leaks, because when you get leaks, that's when you lose compression, and that is of course when you lose power. So I have no idea how well these are seated from factory. I'm guessing they're not perfect, because I'm guessing there's not a guy on the assembly line lapping these valves in, but we are going to be doing that today anyway. Now we do have 8 brand new exhaust valves, so of course they will need quite a bit of lapping just to get the correct angle for the valves into the seats. And then the current intake valves, I have just cleaned them up, reused them, they're good to go. But of course we will be relapping them anyway. They're not in bad condition, to be honest, not really any pitting or anything on them, but yeah, they will need a quick lap just to ensure that we have the best seal as possible. But yeah, enough of that, let's just get cracking and let's see how these valves go in. Okay then, so as you can see, I already have went ahead and lapped 12 of the valves in, so 6 intake valves and 6 exhaust valves. That just leaves 4 left to do on this cylinder here. Now, okay then, so as you can see, I've already went ahead and lapped 12 of the valves in, just leaving 4 left in this cylinder here. So I'll show you pretty much step by step exactly how to do this. So let's go ahead and grab a valve. Okay then, so as we can see, we have an intake valve here, nice and clean, no more carbon left on here. And this valve is actually from this seat. If you are reusing the valves, it is important to return the valve back to the same seat. You don't want to mix and match the valves. I guess if you are lapping them in, they should match, but say for example your valve stem wears with your valve guides, and bear in mind we are still using the original valve guides, then you don't want to put one that is slightly wider in a slightly narrower valve guide. So yes, I have already went ahead and measured the valve stems. By the way, they are all still within tolerance, so no issues with that whatsoever. So yeah, let's go ahead and start lapping these in anyway. So as we can see on the tin, we have fine grinding paste and we have coarse grinding paste. So of course we're going to want to start with the coarse grinding paste. Just going to get a little bit on my finger there, and we're just going to want to apply this just to the edge on the back of the valve. Don't be shy with this stuff. You can't really apply too much. Obviously don't go too crazy, but you're doing a nice amount just around the rim. There we are, more than enough. And now to help the valve itself go into the guide a little bit easier, what I like to do is just dip it in some oil, and this should drop into the guide nicely now. There we are. Now we will get our grinding stick, select the appropriate suction cup. I find for these valves actually the larger one works the best. Obviously push on. Give it a few taps, let the grinding paste settle, and then you're going to want to go back and forth as if you are trying to start a fire with this thing. And as we can hear, it's quite loud to begin with. But as you go on, it will start to get quieter. That is because the two surfaces are getting smooth. And I like to just do this a good few times, 4 or 5 times, let it go smooth, give it a few taps, regrind again, let it go smooth, get some more paste in there. There we are. Like I mentioned, these valves are not bad at all. They're in very good condition, so not a whole load of grinding required. This will probably be the last one. That'll do. Now we'll pull the valve out. You want to be careful. You don't want the valve stem to make contact with the paste. If you do, it's not a big deal. Obviously, you can just clean it off. But you don't want to get any of this grinding paste into the valve guide because it will just eat away at it. So we will remove the valve from the grinding stick. Just get yourself a paper towel. Clean off the grinding paste and also remove the grinding paste from the seat. If we have a quick look at the valve, we should be able to see a nice thin ring, a nice grey thin ring. Don't know how well you're going to be able to see that. Try and get some focus. There we are. It's already pretty smooth. But now if we go in with the fine paste, that's the coarse done with. So flip it upside down. Now use the fine grinding paste. And again, just apply about the same amount. Do not apply grinding paste again to the stem. You're just going to eat away at it. You don't want to grind the stem, just around the base here. There we are. Again, more than enough. Again, we'll just drop this in. Pick up our grinding stick. And just repeat the process once more. And you should notice with the finer grinding paste that it gets even quieter after grinding away. It should get to near silent. You can hear that is very, very smooth now. You don't want to hear a gritty sound. So that is this one done. You can pull it out again, being careful with the stem, don't want to get any paste on it. Pull it off our stick. Give it a good clean. Give the seat a good clean. I'm going to use some brake clean to clean this out as well, because obviously the valve is going in for the final time. So we don't want any of that paste still left in there. I'm going to give the valve a good clean down with some brake cleaner as well. And here is pretty much the finished product. This should create a nice airtight seal now. I'm just going to apply some fresh oil to the stem. And again, drop it down into position into the guide. And there we are. And then what I've done is numbered them after they have been lapped, so I know which ones have been done. That's number 7. And now it's just a case of repeating the exact same process for the other 3, but I'm just going to show you quickly me doing an exhaust valve. This might need a little bit more because it is a brand new valve, so it probably need a little bit more material taken off of it. But after that, yeah, just do the same again, and we'll be pretty much there for the valves being lapped in. So here is just a quick look at a brand new exhaust valve. As we can see, very, very smooth, but this is not going to be at the correct angle for the valve seat. This definitely needs lapping in. So get some coarse grinding paste, apply it all the way around, apply some oil to the stem, just so it glides in a little bit easier, drop it in, grab our grinding stick, and grind away. Just quickly, this is how we're looking after the coarse paste. And there we go then, that's a finished new exhaust valve. Let's drop this in. We'll number this up. Now it's just the 2 final valves to do. So I'll wrap those up, then we can move on to the next step. Okay then, so as you can see, all of the valves have now been lapped in. And now what I'm going to do is test to see if there is any leaks. Now, the test I'm about to do is definitely not 100%. There's definitely, far better, more scientific ways out there to see if you have a proper sealing between the valves and the valve seats. But what I'm about to do is, it's going to give you a good indicator as to how well they are sealing. So what I've done is just installed a spark plug, obviously into the spark plug threads, and I've reinstalled an injector as well, because obviously this is direct injection, so we need to plug that hole as well. And essentially I'm just going to fill the combustion chamber up with some brake cleaner. Now really, brake cleaner is not the best thing to use. You could use petrol, but again, that is not the best thing to use. Best thing really I can think of that you should use is like diesel or something like that, a very, very thin oil. Obviously brake cleaner or petrol is just going to evaporate. Now, like I mentioned, this is not 100% proven method, but if we fill this up and we notice it start to go down very, very quickly, then obviously we know we have a leaking valve. So yeah, I'm just going to fill this up now with some brake cleaner and see how we get on. There we go then, the combustion chamber is completely full right to the top, and you will notice this level going down quite quickly if any of these valves are leaking, which it doesn't appear to be doing. So I'm going to leave this for 5 minutes or so and see how much the level has dropped. Like I said, I am expecting it to drop somewhat because this stuff will of course evaporate, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see just by how much. Okay then, so it's been a good 5 minutes or so, and to be honest, that level really hasn't dropped much at all. I was kind of expecting half of it to have evaporated by now, but yeah, I think it's pretty clear to see that we have a good seal between the valves and the valve seats. That has been a success. I have already went ahead and tested the other 3 cylinders as well. They are all good. So yeah, that is this stage now done. All of the valves have been lapped into the head. Okay, so as you can see, I've turned the head over and it's now time to start installing the new valve stem seals. Okay then, so took the valve stem seals out of the box. Now let's go ahead and start installing them. Just gonna lubricate all of the valve stems themselves with plenty of oil. Now let's begin installing them. So we have these small little guides. It's just a small piece of plastic. Essentially, I'm guessing this is just so you don't damage the valve stem itself. So I'm just going to slide that over the valve stem. It's going to act as a nice guide for the seal to go over the top of. It slides over nicely. Now I'm going to go ahead and just install all of the other valve stem seals, and then we can start installing the valve springs then. And now that all of the valve stem seals have been installed, we can start installing the valve springs, securing them in place with these collets here. So what we'll do is just ensure that the valve is pushed all the way in. We'll drop the valve spring over the top. Now this one is actually a little bit awkward, so there's this one and this one. So this is the exhaust side and this one on the intake side. Because there's really not much space, it's quite awkward. The rest are relatively straightforward, but yeah, I'm going to get this one done first just to show you how it's done. So we'll get our valve spring compressor tool. So one end goes on the face of the valve and the other end goes on the spring, of course. Here's just a quick look at what the valve spring compressor looks like. So of course this end goes on the top of the spring and the other end goes on the face of the valve. I have just taped up all of the valves just to prevent them from falling out of the head. Obviously they have all been seated now, so we don't need to pull them out again. So yep, I'm just going to wind this in, get that valve spring compressed, and then we can secure them in place, like I said, with those collets there. I can see the ridges on the valve now, so I just need to get these collets in place. And then when it comes to installing the collets themselves, it's really up to you how you want to install them. I kind of use a combination of these needle nose pliers, a pick tool and a screwdriver which is slightly magnetic. You really just need to be patient and make sure that these seat correctly. It is a bit of trial and error. It's going to be quite tricky. Especially, like I said, on these first ones here, because there's really not much access to get a tool in there. Okay, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this. I have got a light in here, but can you see those collets are in place? It took me a good 10 minutes to get those in place. Like I said, this one's very, very awkward to do. Next to no room to maneuver a screwdriver in there, but they are now in place. I should be able to remove this valve spring compressor, and that valve spring should be secured in place. Just pay close attention to the collets, make sure they're not moving as you are winding off the valve spring compressor. So the last thing you want is those to go flying across the room, because you won't find them again. They are tiny. Yeah, I can see they're fully seated. Remove the valve spring compressor. There we are. As you can see, there's one valve spring done. It's basically just going to be a case of copy and paste for the others, so all of the exhaust valves and all of the intake valves as well, and then we can move on to the next step. Okay, so I've just realised something. If you are doing this yourself, make sure you have the cylinder head flat. I've just propped it up with a few blocks of wood either side, of course still allowing for space for the compressor tool, but it makes it so much easier to seat those collets. They just drop straight into place. That one took about a minute to do. Like I said, this one, I know there is restricted space, but that took about 10 minutes to get those collets in. So if you can, have the cylinder head completely flat and you'll save yourself a lot of time. We are. That's the last valve done. Just got to release the tension now of the spring. And that is now all of the valve springs securely in place. And now we're on to the next stage, which is the reinstallation of the hydraulic lifter. So we have the tappet and the roller. First thing I'm going to do though is just squirt a little bit of oil into all of the holes where the tappets sit. Then just going to coat the tappet itself and then reinstall the roller onto it. Just pushes on. And that's just a case of dropping it into the hole. Obviously the same with the valves and the valve springs. You want to make sure you keep the same hydraulic lifters to the same valves. You don't want to mismatch things. You want to keep everything exactly how it was. But yeah, that's literally it. Just got to drop it into position. So just got to copy and paste for all of the others. Then we can move on to the next stage. So as you can see, all 16 of the hydraulic lifters, the tappet and the rocker arms are now in place, and next we are ready to reinstall the camshafts. Okay, so it's now time to install the camshafts. Now before I do so, I do have a couple of piston rings to replace on the end of the intake camshaft. Now this is what the original ones look like, and I can only assume that these are responsible for maintaining oil pressure for the Vanos unit. So whether or not you need to replace these, I really do not know. I did search on Real OEM, which is the website that I use to check all of my part numbers, and BMW only listed one of these, but there is quite clearly two needed, so I did go ahead and buy two from the dealership. They were not expensive at all, £4 or £5 each. So I will be replacing them, and they are an updated part as well, so let's just get them removed from the bag. So this is what the new part looks like. It is a complete ring, and the original parts, they have this, they are open-ended, but they have this notch to hook on. Which is the better design, I have no idea, but I thought it is worth to replace these. Now, I'm not sure what kind of material these are, but they are pretty flexible, so it should be relatively easy to install it to the end of the camshaft. Before I do install those new piston rings, I'm just going to give this area a bit of a clean up with some brake cleaner. I have already thoroughly cleaned the camshafts, but now is the final time that we do it, just before reinstallation. I'm just going to apply a small amount of oil to these grooves as well. Now it should just be a case of sliding these over into position. There we are, that's one in place. There we are, that's both of those new piston rings in place, seated nicely. And now what I'm going to do is just give the bearings a last clean as well, again with some brake cleaner. There shouldn't be anything on here, maybe a little bit of oil, but there shouldn't be any dirt on here. I think I'm actually going to install the exhaust camshaft first, so I'm just going to give that a final clean as well. That should be spotless now. And now what I have here is some assembly lube. Essentially this is just very, very thick oil. Now this stuff is very, very sticky, so you do not want to try and remove this once it has been applied. You only want to apply this after you have completely cleaned everything and you're ready to go. So what I'm going to do is apply this first to the rollers on the rocker arms. Just a small amount, probably just a drop, and then what I'm going to do is apply a small amount to the bearings as well that the camshaft journals go into. Okay, so here goes. Don't need to go crazy with this stuff. Okay, so here's how we're looking with the assembly lube. It's now time to drop that exhaust camshaft in place. So that is the exhaust camshaft now in place. I'm just going to do the same with the assembly lube on the rocker arm rollers and also the journal bearings as well. I'll just give the intake camshaft its final clean. Before dropping it into position. There we are then, that is the intake camshaft into position. You can now start installing all of the bearing caps now. But before we do so, again, I'm just going to give them a final clean. I'm just going to apply another drop of the assembly lube to the top of the camshaft journals. Now I can start reinstalling the caps. Now when it comes to installing these bearing caps, of course it is important to make sure that you have them in the correct order and in the correct orientation. So it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. Now of course these are all 8mm bolts. When I say 8mm, I mean the head is 8mm, not the diameter of the thread. So I'm just going to nip these all up. Obviously not going to torque them down with any force. Just going to make sure they're all in and seated correctly first. So then all of the camshaft bearing cap bolts are nipped down, like I said, to no real degree of torque. But now we're going to start the torquing sequence. Fairly easy really, you just start in the middle and spiral your way out. Now these are only very small bolts, I think they're like M6 possibly. So yeah, you don't need a lot of torque on these, they're only 10 Newton meters. So I have 10 Newton meters loaded on the torque wrench ready to go. Now like I said, it will start in the middle, which to my reckoning is here. There's one. There's two. Move on to the other side. One. There's two. Yeah, so move it here and there and there and there and there and there and there. There we go. There's all of the camshaft bearing caps now torqued down. But with that now done, that's the cylinder head now rebuilt. And I'm pretty pleased with how things have gone together. Everything looking nice and fresh, nice and clean. I can't wait to get the whole engine together. Of course, we could go a step further. We could reinstall things like the injectors, the spark plugs, the high pressure fuel pump, the vacuum pump, but there's really no need at this stage. We'll get the bare engine together first, then we'll go ahead and install the ancillaries all together. But yeah, that's us. Job done for now. Okay then, so like I said, the cylinder head is now rebuilt. I am going to wrap this video up. I was contemplating making the entire engine rebuild into one video, but I thought that'd be way too long. I am doing this over a number of weeks. Obviously, I have moved house now, so I'm going to come back here to my parents' house and finish this off when I can. Like I said, the cylinder head's done. I'll probably do a separate video rebuilding the engine block. That's going to be very in depth. And then I'll probably do like a separate video wrapping things up, reinstalling the ancillaries and things like that, getting it back into the car and seeing if the thing fires up, which yeah, I'm pretty anxious about. But yeah, this has been a success anyway. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. Please give it a like, leave a comment down below, subscribe if you have not already done so, and I will see you all in that next one. Peace!